Well, we're 2 episodes in and talking about racks, and you guys have questions. Well, you got rack questions, I've got rack answers on this episode of the GymCrafter podcast. Welcome back to the GymCrafter podcast, everybody. My name's Tim. I am the head gym nerd here at GymCrafter.com, the website and YouTube channel that I built to help folks like you and me build home and garage gyms that we absolutely love. And if you like this type of thing, make sure you like the episode, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you share this stuff. You guys know the deal. Fix your algorithm, tell them what you like so that you see more of this stuff in your feed, and let's get into the episode. So I realized after the last episode that I didn't give you a gym update, and I've actually made some big improvements in the gym, as you can see behind me in this episode and the last episode. So the barbell wall that has been living in my brain for well over a year is finally a reality, and it came out crazily enough, exactly how I expected it to. So I'm really happy with it. I do have a couple of finishing touches left to do, and I am going to do a tour of the wall as a video that's a standalone video on the channel. So make sure you're subscribed so you see when that comes out. I'm going to go over what, because these aren't all my bars, I had to pick just the 8 bars that I use the most. So that's what's up on this wall right now. So I'll walk you through what those are, why I picked them, and also how I built this wall. And then I also finished off the end over here in front of my dumbbells. I've got a couple of details left to do. As you can see right here on the camera, the edge of the wood is pretty ugly, so I've got some paint to kind of finish off the edges so that it looks nice. I've got to finish off the front of some of the shelving, and then once that's done, I'll take you on that'll be in the full tour. I won't do the tour until those things are done. And then I've got some lighting to do. This is, right now it's lit up by the video light I've got on, but when this video light isn't on, this wall actually made it kind of dark and dingy over here. So I'm trying to figure out if I should do some type of a neon lighting around it, or since I'm not 13 years old, maybe to do something nicer than that, do like a spotlight. But we'll see what I choose, and you guys will see it when it's done in one of the future episodes. But that's the update for the gym. The next project I have is, if you can see on the other side of this camera, I have got power strips and extension cords everywhere for my fan, for my air purifier, for my dehumidifier, for the light strips, for my stereo. And I spend as much time tripping over power cords as I do training in here at this point. So I'm going to fix that. And then I should be getting pretty close to the end of the major stuff for the gym. So that is the update on that. Another update for you is the training update. I mentioned a few episodes ago that I was restarting functional power training by Dr. John Russin. This is my 3rd time through the program. And you know, I said it last time, I forget how good his programs are. If you're looking for a program, and I'm not affiliated with him at all, I don't make any money if you buy one of his programs, but I really think that if you are a mid-level to advanced home gym person, in other words, you've been training for a few years or more, these programs are pretty technically demanding and they're pretty brutal. So there are some, 100 rep sets, there are, 5 sets of 30, there's some pretty rough stuff in there, but I gotta tell you, I feel fantastic after every session, and that doesn't always happen when you're training. You know that you're doing a good program when you feel great when you're done, and I feel great when I'm done every single time. You can do this, I said before, you wanna do it in 6 days a week, and I think that's ideal, but if you can devote 4 days a week, there's 4 strength days, and if you just wanna do the lifting portion, you can do it in 4 days a week. The sessions are about an hour, so they're not too bad. You do need a full gym setup. You need bands, chains are nice. I don't have chains, so I use bands mostly. I use bands in every single session so far. You're gonna need a rack, you're gonna need plates, you're gonna need the full shoot and match. So if you just got a minimal setup with like a bench and dumbbells, this program's not for you. The other thing that is wonderful about this is Dr. Russin's certification is called the Pain-Free Performance Certification, I believe. And the nice thing about his programs are you will not end up feeling beat up. You will not, your hips won't talk to you, your joints won't be sore. The way that he programs and the exercises and the setups and the way that he programs things, it's based on the conjugate system from Westside Barbell, but he really walks you through day by day. Every day is laid out perfectly for you. The coaching cues are great, the videos are great, but I'm 53 and this is about as hard as I really can push myself, and I feel great. So, and I know I'll feel great at the end of the program. I have a lot of confidence in his programming. So again, not to ramble on too much about his programming, but I really like it, and it's really different. And I think that if you're looking for something to mix things up, and if you're looking for something to make some really good power gains, definitely check his stuff out. But let's get into the episode for today. I got a lot of questions on racks from you guys. I realize it's a big topic. I realize it's a big purchase. So a lot of people, before they spend sometimes $4,000 and $5,000 on some of these racks. They want to make sure that they're buying the right thing. So I took all the questions that I've been getting and I boiled them down to, I think, 7 or 8 of the most common ones that I get. And hopefully I'll have good answers for you so that helps you guys buy a rack that you like. So let's get into this. The first one is, in the last episode I talked about all the 5/8 inch holes and 1 inch holes, and some are metric and some are imperial units, freedom units, and things don't attach to each other, and you don't want to, it can be a headache sometimes. So a lot of people wrote in and said, well, how do I figure that out? How do I know if I buy this rack and I want to buy this attachment, how do I know if it fits? So I sat down for a little bit and I tried to figure out the resources that I use, either when I answer folks' questions, and please don't send me questions of, will brand X's lever arm fit on brand Y's? I don't know. So, but here's where you can figure it out. The first place I go is on Reddit under Our Home Gym. There's a guy with a really good YouTube channel and Instagram page that I follow, Gray Matter Lifting. He's a moderator over there. The mods over there are great. There's a really good, helpful community there, and I've gotten some really good compatibility answers, because odds are, if you're trying to fit it together, somebody there has already tried to fit it together. Or they'll be able to tell you, hey, it's really weird. They're like, well, this one is 2.95 inches and this one is 2.28. It's crazy how much they know. So that's my first stop. My second stop is the Garage Gym Reviews Facebook group, another group of I think there's over 200,000 members over there. So odds are, if you ask a question, and I don't know if people just have that up all the time, but it's some of those guys that are regulars, they're just like on it, answering things. So that's another good place to check. Another good place to check is to just reach out to the manufacturer of either the rack or the accessory and see if they can tell you. Not a lot of times, a company, like especially the rack company, is not going to want to tell you if another company's accessory fits. I found that issue with Rogue. I've called Rogue a couple of times and they're like, figure that stuff out yourself. They want you to buy their thing, which I get. But hey, somebody's already got your rack. But anyway, so sometimes you can reach out. A Google search sometimes helps. And then the best article I could find is, there's a website called 2Rep Cave, and they've got a nice, easily understandable. There's a couple other, there's a website called Strong Home Gym, which has a compatibility chart that's pretty good. But those two, the Strong Home Gym one and then the 2Rep Cave, the article, those are some just kind of, they're pretty long. There's lots of tables and charts, but you can kind of look by hole spacing and the type of accessory and things like that. So that's where I would look. But honestly, most of the time, Our Home Gym can get the question answered in 24 hours or less. And that's typically where I send people and I don't hear back from them. So I assume that they're getting their question answered. And speaking of questions, let's move on to question number 2. There's an Amazon rack that is 11 gauge steel and 1,000 pound capacity. Why should I spend more on a Titan, Rep, Bells, etc. with the same rating? So we talked about this a little bit last time, but I kind of want to reiterate. First of all, Amazon descriptions are full of crap. Guys, a lot of these companies that sell only on Amazon, nobody's checking to see if this stuff is legit. There's been numerous accounts of people buying things that are a certain gauge steel that aren't that gauge steel. We've seen testing from multiple YouTube channels where it's supposed to hold X amount of weight and it doesn't hold X amount of weight. It's just, you cannot trust the descriptions on Amazon. I mentioned in a previous episode that if something is too good to be true, it's too good to be true. And that is absolutely the case here. There's other reasons too that you shouldn't do it. Powder coat quality, corrosion resistance. The hole spacing sometimes isn't what it says it is. So if you buy something that says it's a 1 inch hole with 2 inch hole spacing and you get it and it's a 1 inch hole with 2 1/4 inch hole spacing, you are SOL for anything you want to add to that rack down the road. So look, the stuff on Amazon, there's some stuff that I spend a ton of money with them. Okay, I'm not against Amazon. But if you're buying the centerpiece for your gym, my advice is to buy it from a well-known company. Buy it from a Bells of Steel, a Rep Fitness, a Rogue Fitness, an American Barbell, Bridge Built. There's a number of companies. Go back and watch the last episode. I list a bunch of them. If you're curious about the quality of a company, post it in the comments below. I'm happy to give you feedback on them. But if it's a no-name company, I would recommend you probably stay away from it, especially if it's only sold on Amazon. Now, I'm not talking about a company just because you've never heard of it. One of the things I learned really fast at Home Gym Con when I went and looking at the vendor list for next year's Home Gym Con is that there are an insane amount of really talented fabricators out there making home gym equipment, and Black Widow is a great example of that. Here's a guy making really fantastic stuff. If you're not in the home gym community, odds are you may not have ever heard of this guy, but his stuff is fantastic. So just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean that it's bad. But if you go to his website, you really quickly understand that it's a worthwhile purchase, that he's a good company, that he's focused on quality, makes good stuff. And just Google for some reviews, you'll see that backed up. But again, if it's if it's ABC company on Amazon, just be real leery, especially if you see spec for spec, it's the same, but the Amazon one is half price. So that's as nice as I can be on video and not get demonetized. But if I was doing this uncut and didn't care whether YouTube monetized the video or not, I would have a little harsher words to say about some of these cheaper brands. The next question. I can't fit a rack in my apartment. Any suggestions? And I get this question a lot. A lot of people, and it's not just apartment goers, it's I don't have a lot of room in my house. I'm trying to fit everything into a corner of a spare bedroom. I've got a buddy my best friend lives in Colorado, who lives in a 500 square foot studio apartment. There's just some places where you can't fit a traditional rack, and a lot of people are at a loss. So I've got a couple of suggestions there. The first one is, there's lots of ways to train without a rack. And I know that's not the answer that this person wants, actually several people want, but that's the right answer, is learn to train in other ways. If you still want a rack, I've got two suggestions for you that work out pretty well in low space environments. The first one is go with a wall attached folding rack. I think every major manufacturer at this point makes one. PRX makes a really expensive one. They're worth the price, but if you're just looking for something inexpensive to fit in the corner of a room or in your apartment, a wall attached folding rack is a great way to go. Now, if you're in an apartment, that may or may not be possible. Sometimes these apartments, they don't want you sinking stuff into the studs. You're gonna get in a little bit of trouble if you do that. So there's another product out there by a company called Force USA, and it's called a folding My Rack. And it's the only one I know of that's like this. It is a freestanding folding rack. Now, you're gonna need to weight this thing down with weight plates when you're using it. If not, I wouldn't use it. But if you can get some sandbags or you can get some extra weight plates to weight this thing down, it's actually a really good option. It's a 2x2 rack. I don't know what the hole spacing is off the top of my head, but at this point, we're looking for a solution piece, something to solve a problem. I'll put a link to this rack below so that you can check it out, but it's a very unique piece. Force USA is a really good company. They make really good stuff. I've been working with them lately on a couple of different projects that hopefully you'll see soon, and I'm a big fan of their stuff, and I'm a big fan of this particular rack as, like I said, a solution piece. So if you are not willing to train without a rack, which I understand, I love training in a rack, and you really want to get some barbell work in, you want a way to do squats inside of a rack with safeties, which is really the benefit of this, is it allows you to work inside of a rack with safeties. So if you're concerned about the safetiness, is that even a word? If you're concerned about the safety of your training and you're training alone in an apartment or something like that, I really think you should at least take a look at this particular rack. That's a great solution. For those of you out there who live in apartments and you've got racks, what are some other solutions for people? I know I recommended the PR1100 from Rep. If you can make enough room for a rack, that's one suggestion for you. It's a freestanding rack. But what else have you guys come across that works for you? The one thing I would not recommend is I would not recommend squat stands. I see a lot of people buying these, they're just stands with little U-shaped pieces of metal on the top. I'm not a big fan of those. If you miss re-racking in one of those, you're in for a bad time. They're typically super cheap, like 30 bucks a pair on Amazon, which should tell you all you need to know about entrusting your safety to them. Speaking of safety, they don't have safeties on them typically, but I know a lot of people in apartments use those. So let me know what you think. You can also just do exercises with the barbell that don't require a rack. You can still train with a bar and do most of your movements without needing a rack. So what do you guys think? Help out the apartment dwellers out there. It's been over 20 years since I've lived in an apartment, so I haven't had to look for apartment stuff in a really long time. So what can you guys help with? Post it in the comments below. Let's move on to the next question. Oh, I just talked a lot about this. Okay, you talk a lot about safeties. You don't need them, just use clips. Okay, so I got a surprising number of comments on recent videos and Instagram posts that say the same thing. I got a surprising number of emails over the last month that say the same thing. So let's just address this. And this is my opinion. This is what you guys can do what you want to do. I don't want to come across as condescending or that I'm telling you what to do. You always want to use safeties, okay? There's a school of thought out there apparently. I didn't realize how many there were. In fact, I just saw a RitFit post on Instagram where this girl was lifting and her whole thing was like, I just set a PR and I didn't even, because she did math wrong on the bar and didn't realize how much weight she had. She's like, and I did it with clips on. And I'm thinking, so that tells me that when you are going for a heavy lift, that you're just taking the collars off the end and you're planning on dumping the weight plates if you get in trouble. And I've seen people do that with squats and I've seen people do that with the bench press. And like I said, a surprising number of people lift this way. This is not a good way to lift, guys. So accidents happen because you don't expect them. And the big fallacy here is when people set up to lift like this, they expect to be able to, it's the same people who go, well, just learn to get out from under a bar if you're squatting, right? You don't need to put up the safeties, just learn to dump a bar, which is it's an important skill to have. You want to know how to get out from underneath the squat bar, because if you get stuck in the hole and you can't get back up, you need to be able to get the bar off your back, right? That's super important. But you also need to have safeties. And there's a couple of really important reasons as to why. Number one, if you are trying to PR, you are pushing really hard, and it is not unheard of for people to pass out mid-lift. If you pass out mid-lift, you're not dumping plates, you're not dumping the bar is coming straight down on you. That is a bad problem, especially if you're unconscious. Guys, you need safeties to catch that bar if something happens. Again, I'm super happy that nothing bad has ever happened. I'm really happy that you've never gotten lightheaded while you're lifting. But there's a first time for everything, and it only needs to happen once. If you're lifting after a long night out last night, if you didn't have enough food in you, whatever it happens to be, if you're getting over a cold, stuff can happen. And people die under a bar every year. It's not that it's common, but it's not unheard of. It happens a bunch of times every year, and that person never planned on getting stuck under a bar. So that's one thing, you can pass out. The second thing is, and I actually had somebody comment in my last YouTube or one of my previous YouTube videos, they made a comment, they said they had just switched to an Olympic lifting barbell, they weren't used to the bar spin, and when they unracked for the bench press, the bar spun and they weren't holding onto it tight enough and it spun out of their hand and landed straight on their chest, and they went immediately to the emergency room. I think they said they had 145 pounds or something like that on it, which you don't want to drop a loaded barbell on your chest. Again, this person wasn't planning to drop the bar. It just sometimes it happens. It's really important that you are prepared with safeties in case the unexpected happens. When I drive someplace, I'm never planning to get into an accident, but I wear my seatbelt every time just in case. It's one of those better to have it and not need it things than need it and not have it. Last time is something that I've experienced. I have blown out a lot of things on my body while I'm lifting, from Achilles, luckily not a tear, but a partial rupture. I've had hips go out, I've had knees go out, I've had all kinds of problems because I'm made of paper apparently. And if you get injured during a lift, again, dumping plates off in a controlled manner requires that you still are able to control your body. And if you're injured, you can't do that. It's really important that you have those safeties in place. So I know I probably talked about that 3 times as long as most people want me to, but I've gotten enough emails and comments about this, and this is just something that's a really big thing for me, especially since I train folks here in the gym. I deal with a lot of people that are like, really got to put the collars on? It's only 135. Yes, you've got to put the collars on. The last thing I'll point out about safeties is in relation to that. There's an old saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And that's another great example of that girl's Instagram video is sometimes she uses collars and sometimes and what happens is if you're not in the habit of using them every time, then what's going to happen is you're going to forget them the one time that you need them. So no matter what the weight is, no matter how much weight's on the bar, no matter how safe you think you are, it's a really good idea to get in the habit of using safeties on your bar. And when you buy a rack, that has the ability to attach safeties and to Pick the safeties that you want. Sometimes they cost extra. Some of these companies, they make you buy safeties, price them separate because maybe they think you might already have them. But I know a lot of people are like, I don't need them, I just won't buy them. Make sure you buy safeties with your rack if you don't already have them, and then please use them on every lift. I don't want to find out that somebody that watches these videos died because they thought that they could get out from under a bar or dump plates. So the last thing is, I'll never forget in a gym watching somebody military press without collars. They start to lose the weight and the weight falls off of one end, and what happens to that? Wham! The bar just destroyed the bottom of their chin. There's blood everywhere, there were teeth everywhere. It was not a pretty picture. So yes, they thought they could dump the weights, but it just, again guys, please be safe out there. Next question. Should I bolt my rack to the floor? Yes, if you can. I say that never having bolted one of my own racks to the floor, never planning to bolt one of my racks to the floor, and most of the people that I know will never bolt their rack to the floor. So it's one of those things where yes, you should if you can. It's not that hard. I've moved my garage around so many times, I just didn't want the holes in the floor. If you're in a basement where you know your rack is going to be in a certain place and that's the only place it's going to be, definitely bolt it down if you can. That said, like we talked about in the last episode, just make sure that you're being safe. Make sure that it's weighted down. Make sure that you're not doing things outside of the rack that cause your rack to be unstable. So a rack that's stable while you're lifting inside of it may not be stable when you put jammer arms on or when you use a suspension trainer. A good trick that I do is when I use my suspension trainer, I attach it to the rear upright support instead of the front. And that way when I'm leaning back, I've got the whole length of the rack to keep the rack stable, whereas if you attach it to the front, it's just kind of tipping over like a soda machine. And if you didn't know, a lot of people die under soda machines every year from trying to get their soda out, so don't do that either. But yes, if you can bolt your rack down, do it. If you can't or you're not going to, it's on you to make sure that your rack is stable and securely weighted down. And last but not least, I got this question a lot. What are my top 3 attachments? I've got a lot of what are your favorite attachments, but it boils down to what are my top 3 attachments. If I was buying a rack, and I'm going to be buying a rack soon, and there are 3 attachments that I buy with every rack that I buy. I recommend this to all the people that I help build home gyms. These 3 attachments, in my opinion, are must-haves. Number 1, safety straps. I prefer safety straps over pin pipes or bars or flip downs or arms. Those are my favorite. Now, I like to also have one of the more kind of stable, not stable, but the more stiff, like pins or pipes or things like that, because I use those to lift from. So I'll actually use those as a way to hold the barbell and actually do rack pulls and things like that. But as far as for the purpose of safety, whether I'm squatting or whether I'm bench pressing, I prefer safety straps. I think they're much more enjoyable to use. I don't like the way that stiff safeties interfere with your lift if your bar touches them. If you put them low enough to where your bar doesn't touch them with full depth, I train my clients and I do myself. I try and use as much depth in my lifts as possible. And if you've got your safeties set below that maximum depth, then they're not really safeties. They're not there at the bottom point. Whereas with straps, the way that you can situate them, they're a lot easier to use and a lot easier to set up to where they don't interfere with your lift. So I definitely recommend upgrading to safety straps. And I really think once you use them and once you get the hang of them, that they're really the best option for safeties out there in a rack. The second thing I always do is I always upgrade to the multi-grip pull-up bar. Now, I'm not a big fan of the globes and things like if you're a climber or something, that's awesome, but I think at least you should have a multi-grip pull-up bar. And what that allows you to do is that allows you to do standard pull-ups, it allows you to do chin-ups, and that allows you to do neutral grip pull-ups. The angled stuff is cool. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't, but I think the 3 basic grips you should be able to do pull-ups with are normal pronated pull-ups, supinated chin-ups, and then a neutral grip are the 3 pull-up variations that I program most for my clients. They're the 3 variations that I do the most, and I really think it's a really quality upgrade for your rack. They're not all that expensive, and in fact, a lot of racks, or at least some racks now, are coming with those standard instead of just the straight pull-up bar. Also, because there's 2 points of contact, because they're wide, it does add stability to a less stable rack. So if you're getting a 2x2 rack, by adding that multi-grip pull-up bar, you're adding a little bit of stability to the rack itself. So that's a nice thing to have. The last thing that I always recommend is that you upgrade your J-hooks to what are called sandwich J-hooks. The J-hooks that typically come with the racks, or the least expensive, are just a piece of metal, and then they've got some UHMW plastic on top. And what happens is at the front edge of that hook, and then all across the bottom of the hook is exposed metal. And more than a few times, you can catch the front of that hook when you're unracking your bar, or you can catch the bottom of the hook when you're re-racking your bar and you ding up your barbell, you mess up the knurl, you knock off the Cerakote. And sandwich J-hooks have UHMW. There's basically two pieces of metal, and between is one piece of UHMW, and they're sandwiched together. And what that allows you to do is that it's protected all along the outside of the J-hook. You know, just one nick of the barbell and you go, I should have spent more money on the better J-hooks. So those are the three accessories that I would recommend: safety straps, multi-grip pull-up bar, and sandwich J-hooks. What about you guys? What do you guys think as far as your favorite rack accessories? What are the things that, if you were gonna buy a new rack today, or maybe you're planning on buying a new rack, what are the accessories that you would recommend that people get, and why? Why do you like them? Why do you think it's a must-have for people? I understand there's lots of stuff out there that isn't necessarily a must-have, but why are the accessories that you pick, or maybe you recommend, why are they something that everybody should have? Because when people are buying a rack, that's typically the best time to bundle everything together. You're not going to pay any additional shipping. Sometimes you get additional discounts. A lot of these rack builders out there, the least expensive you can buy that accessory for is while you're building your rack. So what should people add to their racks? And what other questions about racks do you have? You can either drop them in the comments below, you can email them to me at tim@gymcrafter.com, and I'll try and answer them. If I get another bunch of questions, we'll put another episode together like this to help you guys out. And that's all I've got for now. So if you're still watching right now after all that rambling about safety stuff, I appreciate it. If you liked the episode, make sure you hit the like button. As I always ask, if you're watching still and you didn't like the episode, get a life. I don't know what else to say. Why watch YouTube videos you don't like all the way to the end? Watch a different video, or drop a comment, let me know why you didn't like it, and I'll try and change things up so that you do, and we get more subscribers and people actually like the videos and get more out of them. And that's all I've got for now. As always, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and until next time, I'm Tim with GymCrafter.